Oh, there it is. Mic was off.
There you go.
Oh.
I think I had that same trouble last time, so okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Supervisor.
Hey, how's everybody?
Talking about the weather.
Oh, yeah.
The weather. Although
I was saying,
I'm slightly irritated this morning.
why?
Well, I went to the Standard and I saw Jonah Lamb did a story about how the SFPD tax squad quietly retired their SIG P320 handguns. And as you may remember, I have been trying to cover the issue of the BART police, the entire BART police using it as their standard sidearm for the past few years. This is a handgun that over the past few years has been racking up, accumulating more and more reports of accidental discharges. Basically, you just have to look at it wrong and it goes off. And so that was, that's Jonah doing his reporting, but what can you do?
What, that they retired them?
Yeah, they retired them. I guess they're going back to a slightly older pistol that some people complain about, but I actually have that same gun. Works fine.
Weird.
Yeah, exactly. But so there's probably going to be something about the BART police and their use of it and the fact that they don't know what to do yet, in the newsletter this coming week.
Oh, yeah, because you've been following that.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to do a story about it, but the BART has been not particularly cooperative about it.
I'm shocked.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and also I was looking up to see what's going on at City Hall this week, even though everyone's pretty much on recess. A lot of the commissions and some other bodies are still at work. And the Commission Streamlining Task Force is meeting on Wednesday. And they're covering two topics, one of which is the city administrator's recommendations for what task forces, et cetera, subcommissions can be gotten rid of. And lo and behold, one of the ones on the list that they said they could be getting rid of was the same one, the sweat-free ordinance compliance task force that yeah, exactly, that Supervisor Mandelman got gored over, what was it, 2 weeks ago now? Over we have the story about that in our newsletter that back then. If you subscribe to our newsletter by going to our page at thevoicesf.org, you can look up that story. But that was the board president was quite miffed about that whole thing because it just seemed kind of meaningless. But yeah, the Labor Council was calling up all the supervisors, threatening everybody, saying, "You can't get rid of this task force that nobody sits on and does anything." So, lo and behold, here comes the city administrator saying, "Yeah, you should get rid of it." So that's what my Sunday has been like so far.
Well, maybe you should head on over to the Watermelon Festival that's happening at Fort Mason.
What?
It'll lift your spirits. Yeah, there's a Watermelon Festival. Who knew?
Why? What do watermelons have to do with San Francisco? I mean, we just had a baby watermelon. We didn't have one. We ate one last night.
Well, there you go. You're already celebrating.
I love watermelon.
So I'm heading over.
Are you really going? Are you serious?
I love watermelons. It's my favorite fruit.
I love watermelons. I do too. Our pit bull mix Quinn actually loves watermelon.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, she likes all fruits and vegetables. She's kind of a weird dog, but yeah, you couldn't ever get one into Skylar. She just no. Mm-mm.
We had a cat who loved cantaloupe. And
oh yeah, cats love cantaloupe. That's true.
Yeah. Mm.
So what's going on, Supervisor Dorsey?
Not too much. My dog is behaving.
Yay!
You should know. I should give everybody an early warning on this. When we're both home alone and I'm on a Zoom call or a phone call, he starts realizing that I'm not paying attention to him. I think Zoom calls drive him crazy because I think he just thinks I'm talking to the wall. So hopefully if he starts barking or like acting up, this could be interesting. We'll see.
That's why, actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's why John literally 2 minutes ago just left the house with Quinn, because he said, well, I know that when you're on your call, that when you do that show, she's in there barking out the window. I'm like, yeah, it's not so great. So yeah.
We'll see. I took him out. I actually deliberately took him to the dog park so he would run around for an hour. And I was hopefully he will be napping a little bit.
Oh,
so we'll
good.
see. Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, I every now and then, I don't have a pet, but I watch pet videos. I guess that's very popular. They're very popular on YouTube. If and when I need to, if and when right after I'm finished writing something or editing something, I'll dump into the chair and brain rot myself to clear everything out. And it often involves pet videos, and it's invariably there's this train of blooper videos specifically involving newscasters during COVID that were broadcasting from home.
Oh yes.
And because they have pets, and the pets are always interrupting their broadcast because they think that they're talking to the animal or they're talking to themselves or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
Take 1, 3, 2, 1. Yesterday they're
Yes.
And it is now 11 o'clock. Welcome to the Sunday brunch space from the Voice of San Francisco. I am Mike Egge, editor-in-chief. I am here with our editorial director, Susan Dyer Reynolds, and correspondent Erica Sandberg, and District 6 Supervisor Matt Dorsey in the city and county of San Francisco. He is here mainly to talk about his current struggle to reform the city contracting process. It's a process that sort of began in April of 2023 with the reform of 12X by Mandelman that he got done, and then we were just talking earlier about an attempt to some further legislation that was going to try and go all the way but didn't quite get completed because of some idiosyncrasies, and you talked about possibly putting that on the ballot. I can't help but again refer to my alma mater, the San Francisco Standard, and Alex Lash's editorial where he says, Dorsey's move is kind of a Nixon to China moment for San Francisco's queer community. This is very, very interesting because right before I read this, I was watching YouTube videos of John Adams's opera, Nixon in China. So it's like, what? It's very likely takes a champion of gay rights to say it's time for a different fight. In this case, the battle to clean up the city's out of control finances. And it's probably a little bit more profound than that, because with 12X, we had this problem of almost a majority of states. We were essentially not doing business with businesses in a majority of states. And many of those businesses that were wanting to do business with us were gay owned, but they just happened to be in those states that didn't allow for gay marriage benefits or whatever. And here you and I were discussing this earlier, how the current issues that you're trying to reform actually open up all kinds of other unintended consequences, including things like possibly rent seeking and contracting fraud and things like that you're trying to reform. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So I will tell you that what informs my perspective on city contracting, more than being a member of the Board of Supervisors, is having worked in city government for, the better part of 20 years. And I have seen the processes that are the cumbersome processes, and also rules that we create, that we impose on city contractors that might have had a powerful rationale once upon a time that we then leave in our contracts. So, for example, we have in every contract with the city and county of San Francisco, we have the McBride principles, which is kind of something from the 80s and early 90s that was about protecting Catholic workers in Northern Ireland. That provision, the McBride principles, as I understand it, are now exceeded by the law in the United Kingdom and the European Union, but we still have them. We have a prohibition on doing business with Burma. Burma ceased to exist as a country in 1989. We have restrictions on the use of tropical hardwoods and Indonesian hardwoods, and Indonesia stopped exporting hardwoods 20 years ago. And then one of the other ones is the Equal Benefits Ordinance. And among the kind of, the social policy things that we built into our contracting, I will defend equal benefits as one that really did make a difference and for which the principle was worth the expense. There was a time for gay and lesbian couples when domestic partnerships were the only chance we had for equality with heterosexual couples who had access to marriage rights that we didn't have, and I say that as a gay man. This is an important battle to me, and I think this touches on the Nixon goes to China thing. I was working for the cause of marriage equality in 2000 when I was part of the consulting team with a guy named Robert Barnes and Mike Marshall and Tony Winokur and others on the No on 22, No on Night initiative. And we lost that, but it was an important battle. I was in the San Francisco City Attorney's Office for 14 years, and 9 of those years were working on the issue of marriage equality. And the City Attorney's Office in San Francisco was the only law office involved in every step of the legal battle in California, from defending Gavin Newsom for issuing marriage licenses in 2004 to 2013 in the Perry case when we finally struck down Proposition 8, and then set the stage for the 2015 decision in Obergefell that established marriage equality for gay and lesbian couples nationwide. So I care about this issue. I've worked on the front lines of it for most of my career. And at some point, you just have to take the win and move on. And to me, one of the things about the Equal Benefits Ordinance, although it fulfilled a really important function for a time, it isn't lost on me that we spent 9 years in the city attorney's office arguing to every court that would listen to us that domestic partnerships were not good enough, that this was second-class citizenship, and gay and lesbian couples deserved full rights and responsibilities of marriage. And we won some and we lost some, and it was a roller coaster ride that, there were 2 of us on the city attorney's executive staff who were from the LGBTQ plus community, me and Terry Stewart, who was the lead lawyer on this. This was a personal fight to us. And when we finally won, I remember having a conversation about the domestic partnership requirement in the Equal Benefits Ordinance and, should we look at moving on from this? And at the time, I think the consensus was, well, it would be up to a member of the Board of Supervisors, but there's no harm in it. Doesn't seem to be doing any problems. The problem that we have right now is we have a structural deficit that is still approaching $1 billion per year. We have some things that we need to fix in our government to save money. And to me, the lowest hanging fruit in that equation is the $5.8 billion that we spend on contracts for goods and services. And I will say this, I want to fight for city workers, and I want to make sure that we can avoid layoffs. I think taxpayers are better served by the dollars that they spend on our workforce than on, generally speaking, our contracts and nonprofit partners. I think there's more cost savings to be had on that side of the equation. And one thing that we have seen is bid participation is plummeting. 2 years ago, Carmen Chu issued a report that said that found that 46% of our competitive bid solicitations get 1 or 0 bids. So we're not just minimizing competition, we're eliminating it in nearly half of cases. And One of the biggest offenders is the Equal Benefits Ordinance, which today prohibits a growing majority of businesses from even participating in bids for contracts for goods and services with the city. So if we were, I'm asking the budget and legislative analyst to calculate for me. Let's give us an estimate. How much cost savings might we see if we were to expand the bidding pool from roughly, generously 45% of companies in the country to 100%? Might more competition result in better prices? Every study I have seen suggests that a more competitive bidding is better for the taxpayers and at the end of the day.
Mhm.
I think that will be the case here. And there's reason to think, because there was a previous report that was done on reform of 12X, which you may have touched on, that suggests that the savings could be as much as 20%. But when we're talking $5.8 billion, a 5% savings would be $290 million. That's the entire budget of the Recreation and Park Department.
Yeah.
A
Wow.
1%
Saw
savings.
that was staggering.
Yeah. A 1% marginal savings, if we could get competitive bidding to be more competitive, would be $58 million. That's the entire budget of the planning department. And then if we're talking about 20%, which was what the BLA concluded, estimated in one of their last reports, then we're talking literally a 10-figure savings. So I think this is where we should be focused in the what I would call the low-hanging fruit of cost savings is our contracting. Let's make competitive bidding more competitive, and taxpayers will be better served by it.
Okay, great. Who's fighting that?
So some of the folks who were authors and advocates for the Equal Benefits Ordinance back in the day, this was a law that was enacted in 1996, feel very strongly that this played an important role in the LGBTQ plus equality movement. I don't disagree with that, but they feel that this is something that's still worth fighting for. I don't share that perspective. I have not heard a convincing explanation for how this law remains an LGBTQ plus priority now that marriage equality has been established. The only really coherent argument I have heard is that we are in an environment where a lot of longstanding legal precedents are endangered by the Supreme Court, and I don't disagree with that, which is why the way that I would change equal benefits if we were to move forward with an update to it would be not to repeal it, but to have an enforcement trigger that we would no longer enforce this. But if the Obergefell case from 2015 that established marriage rights, if that were ever struck down, or if marriage rights for same-sex couples were ever overturned in any way, we could have an enforcement trigger that the Equal Benefits Ordinance would take effect for new contracts immediately. So to me, there is a way to address the volatility of case law that we are in right now and save taxpayers money. We can do both, but some people don't agree.
So the main.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say. So that's the main argument that I've heard, and I'm curious if, since I'm assuming some of the companies that would be competitive bidding already are not offering them, so they're being excluded from offering bids anyway because they're not offering them in the first place, correct?
Yeah, one thing that we run into when San Francisco does this, as rich of a city as we are, we don't really, when we throw our weight around, it's not that much weight when you're considering some of the large bidders. And it's not enough to make a large company change its employment practices to get a little contract with San Francisco.
Right.
So, and what I have seen is there a lot of companies that offer domestic partnerships still do. It's a legacy benefit, and I think people don't want to get rid of it. Although I recall that back in the day, after the Obergefell decision, Verizon and IBM and some others decided, well, the only reason they adopted a domestic partnership benefit scheme was because they believed in the cause of LGBTQ plus equality, and marriage equality accomplished that. So a lot of large companies did away with it. And the numbers that I have seen is that I think it's 38% of small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, still offer domestic partnership benefits. So there's a diminishing bid pool of people who are eligible. That's the thing that I think we've got to change.
Yeah. And as far as competitive bidding and the rules and regulations all around it, let's be real. They get around things anyway because we have, for example, at the SFPUC, when, Harlan Kelly, for example, wanted to give his bid to AECom Parsons, part of why they would form these joint benefit group is so that they could, for example, get away with the fact that AECom had moved to Texas and San Francisco wasn't supposed to do business in Texas. So they just bring on a joint venture partner who isn't in Texas and put down their address. I mean, there's just ways around it.
This is actually my biggest axe to grind, and it's one thing that haunts this space and that was going to make life really complicated to reform it is this is dull as dishwater. I mean, this stuff is, if you read Raphael Mandelman's legislation, it's tedious, but it's really important. Yep. And I really cheer him on for leading this fight. And I'm shoulder to shoulder with him on it. Like, there are some things that we need to do that are going to take political courage, but we have to do this. And the thing that infuriates me the most is I have seen it happen. If you want to get a contract with an unapproved vendor, you can find a way to get a different vendor to subcontract it, and then there's a markup, and we're just sort of normalizing this expenditure of funds that's needless, a needless markup just to get around our own rules.
Yep.
And one of the things that I mentioned during the hearing that was on Raphael Mandelman's legislation that I was co-sponsoring, if you think about what the city has been through in the last 5.5 years, we have had 3 different declarations of emergency. One was COVID, one was the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative, and the other was Mayor Lurie's fentanyl emergency. Now, other than COVID enabling us to draw down federal dollars, most of the provisions of all 3 of those involved getting out of our own way and giving authority to move quickly so that we don't have to deal with our own rules. And at some point in 5.5 years, if we're having 3 different emergencies so that we can get anything done in this town, we got to start asking questions about what's wrong with our rules and what should we do to fix them. So to me, in this day and age, I feel like Democratic-led cities have to do a better job and be more conscientious about governing more effectively, more cost effectively, just governing better. At the end of the day, good government is about fighting waste, fraud, and abuse. And make no mistake about this is the waste in waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, I think the city is very famous for cutting off its nose to spite its face. And, for me, the chain legislation is a great example of that, right? They went from absolutely zero chains, and I literally got death threats for supporting a Pet Food Express on Lombard Street. And, and then Pet Food Express said, that's it. I'm not opening any more stores in San Francisco. They did just recently open one but it's not in San Francisco. It's on, Parkland, in the Presidio. But basically, they fought that, and now it's gone the other way, where you're getting a freaking Nation's burger, at the wharf next to an In-N-Out burger at the wharf, when people are really coming to see crab pots, and it just there seems like there's no in between. Now people want to put chains up and down Van Ness after forcing them to not be allowed to open on Van Ness and a bunch of empty buildings. San Francisco just can't get out of its own way.
Yeah.
I think one of the big, and a lot of this it ultimately goes down to emotion, how people emotionally feel about government and how it affects politics. I think because I was talking with someone about, of all things, defense policy and diplomacy, and we were talking about the fact of how the United States is always going to be behind the 8 ball on many areas because we can't plan more than 5 years in advance because of the budget cycles. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there are always evolving issues that either wane or get bigger or smaller. And when you create legislation that is aimed at those specific issues, they should naturally be subject to review or sunset.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're drafting the legislation saying, I want to support civil rights for 5 years, it just doesn't seem right politically. And then, of course, you're also goring people's oxes, and if those people are still around, they're going to speak up because they have an emotional attachment to what they got passed.
Right. And I think that played out a little bit in some of the coverage in the Bay Area Reporter. There's people I respect. Jeff Sheehy was sort of leading the charge on this. Is somebody who's a friend and former supervisor. I know Tom Amiano is very upset at me. I think Leslie Katz and I think Gary Virginia and so the people I've seen on social media.
Wait, Tom Amiano's still around?
Yeah, but I mean, it is. I think some of the mainstream media coverage about this focused on would almost lead people to believe that it was the entire LGBTQ plus community that was really up in arms about this. And in fact, I think it was really it was some leaders from a generation ago who are up in arms about it. And as one of the, I kind of joked with someone that I haven't had this many aging gays mad at me since that time I insulted Judy Garland.
Yeah, that's going in a quote.
But
somewhere.
Don't let Taylor Swift know that you insulted Judy Garland.
Yeah. Oh Lordy. Oh boy.
Well,
I mean, that is part of the job. You're going to piss people off. You're going to. That is something that you just accept. Right?
Yeah, and I would say especially on this issue, getting back to that principle about some of the most important and consequential reforms that we can be making and that we have to make in the next 5 years. We have to really get the size of government down, and we have to be serious about identifying the waste and getting rid of it. And this is where it's really tedious kind of work, this contracting and procurement reform. And every reform, what we're seeing is going to have a constituency that is going to focus on this like scorched earth and turn people out. And this is where, I would say that San Francisco politics would always be well served by people who have backbone and courage to pick fights and have a thick skin. But I think it's going to be really necessary in the next few years, because what we're seeing with what we need to do on procurement reform is there's a lot of knives are drawn, and I haven't even put pen to legislation on this yet. I asked for a budget and legislative analyst report to find out how many companies offer. I've seen different data, but I would like for the BLA to do a comprehensive analysis on this. How many companies are still offering domestic partnership benefits to comply with the Equal Benefits Ordinance? From what I can tell, it's a diminishing number. The other thing that I would love to see is, I know that there are bid participation and public sector procurement models that can put an estimation on how much cost savings could we expect to see if we expand the bidding pool. That is, I know there was from the 12X report that BLA did, as I mentioned earlier, they were estimating that it could be as high as 20%. If that's the case, 20% would fix the deficit. Structural deficit's fixed. We don't even have to we don't have to lay off a single worker.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So I want to jump in here and ask you something, which is, if you look at the general public, San Franciscans, right, and they see almost $1 billion in a deficit, right, and then they see how much the budget is, approximately $15 billion. I think that's where we are right now, right? $8 billion where they landed. And we see services not being provided, and we see that the city's not clean, and various things. Just as a general reaction, how do you react to the public's looking at this and saying something is seriously amiss? Does it bother you? Does it bother the board of supervisors? Like, is this something that's even on the table in terms of, wow, we've really got to get this together? Or is it, there's a disconnect? And I don't mean to be rude about that, but I mean, like, how much does the public feature in these decisions when you look at, public sentiment?
So I had a call coming in, just so I might have lost some of this. So to restate the question succinctly, how much does public awareness of this matter
Yeah, I mean,
to the debate?
where you see this, we have a deficit, we have an
Yeah.
enormous budget, we have a city that appears to be, in fact, I would even say not even appears to be, in many ways, it is a dysfunctional city. So, how
Mhm.
does the Board of Supervisors deal with that in terms of public sentiment? How do you address? Because that's when people get angry. Right?
Right.
They get
This
very
goes to
angry when they
public perception over the sheer size of San Francisco's budget, basically.
Right. What I would like to do is make sure that the anger is focused on where we can make the biggest change, the biggest bang for our buck. I am absolutely convinced that the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the waste of city government is in our contracting.
Mhm.
And I think I'm hoping that, even though the Labor Council has not been supportive of me in the past, I have been very supportive of our city workforce because, as I said, I think taxpayers get more value for actual workers, people who are investing their careers in working for the city and county of San Francisco, than the nonprofits and the contractors. And they can live without us, but I would rather just make sure that we're protecting workers who are delivering real value for taxpayers, and try to wring out every last bit of value we can in our contracts, which is $5.8 billion in a $16 billion budget. It's more than a third of our budget is there. To me, that's the lowest hanging fruit.
Right.
Here's what gives me optimism, and I think, Erica, this is what answers your question. I am encouraged that the public is paying attention to this, because before Raphael Mandelman's legislation went off the rails and was sent back to committee, I would never have predicted this would even get press attention. It's really arcane stuff. That it's precisely because it's arcane. I think it masks how much waste and abuse is in it. But I really appreciate that Raphael has taken on this fight, and I will tell you, it was not my intention to pick a big fight over equal benefits, but I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Of the social policy requirements that we have, the one that is the most onerous and that right out of the gate disqualifies anybody from even participating is the Equal Benefits Ordinance, because we have to look at what benefits you provide to your workers before we even allow you to be a bidder.
Right.
So it's conflicting. It's disqualifying out more than half of the companies in this country, and the taxpayers are subsidizing all of that waste. Now, there was a time, I think, that expense, that added premium, was worth it because it was front and center for the cause of LGBTQ plus equality, and that ended in 2015. It's time to take the win and then save taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand what people don't see about how easy it still is to get around these things that San Francisco has in place. I mean, you can look to the port with their LBE stuff, and which Dwayne Jones was getting contracts through that. There's just a lot of corruption over the years that have gone into these really strict regulations that have been put in place. And then, of course, the big companies are, easily going to figure out a way around them. Like, oh, you don't want me in Texas? Well, I'll just get a joint venture, together with somebody that's not in Texas.
Right.
And so if it's that easy, then, then there's a lot, there's a lot of fraud and waste going on.
Yeah, the waste in there is, what I have seen is, usually when you have a workaround, you can bet your bottom dollar somebody is profiting off that workaround, that there's going to be some markup, somebody's going to do a subcontract, and they're going to add their little thing. And I think if taxpayers had any idea how much waste there is in the system, they would be furious.
There are probably entire business models based around that.
What was that?
There are probably entire business models based around consulting companies to do that.
I think there are some companies that specialize in this kind of thing, but at the end of the day, this is it really is on us as policymakers to be brave and to go through this stuff and clean it up. So,
well, it's interesting that you say the word brave, because I think that's one of the things that is so agitating when you look at city government. It feels like a lot of people are not brave, and I'm not going to point anybody out at this stage because I think it's kind of irrelevant. It's that, but it's a general.
The Chronicle thinks he's very brave.
No, I think it's refreshing to see someone like Matt Dorsey that is willing to. I mean, I realize from covering politics for 2 decades that and from knowing you in your work for that long in various roles, I am very well aware of the fact that compromise must happen and everyone won't always be happy, and you can't always get what you want, right?
Right.
But it at least makes some noise. I'm just tired of the status quo, and every time a supervisor gets into office, we're going to do this and this and this, and then they just sit back and vote with the majority. It's like watching Big Brother when they know they don't have the votes to keep someone they really would rather vote in to keep, but they'll like vote against the person that they're madly in love with just because they want to vote with the majority of the house. I kind of feel like that's exactly what the Board of Supervisors is. It's like a giant Big Brother game. It's just the inability or the lack of desire to go against the grain is frustrating.
Okay, well, I would like to do this then, just a quick thing here, which is, let's just say you got your way, Matt, right?
Okay.
You were able to shave off all of that horrible waste. What would San Francisco government look like then? What would we get out of this?
What I think we would see, and it wouldn't be overnight, because you have to assume that most contracts are multiple year kinds of things. But if we approached contracting reform with the principle that we want to make competitive bidding as competitive as possible, and anything that gets in the way of more people bidding, we have to get rid of. I'm hoping that this is something that finds agreement with progressives and public sector unions, because we shouldn't make any apologies. A lot of the biggest contracts are huge corporations. Why is anybody against sticking it to huge corporations when they've got us over a barrel in competitive bidding because nobody else is bidding? I think we should try to do everything we can to find as much political consensus that we're going to squeeze every dollar of value out of competitive bidding and public sector procurement. And then I think in a matter of a few years, we would see the portion of contracting that is right now eating up more than a third of our budget. I think it should be substantially less. I think we would see significant savings over a period of a few years. And it's also important because it needs to be clear to anybody who's bidding on a contract that there's a lot of value, but competition's back in San Francisco. If you're going to be bidding on a contract here, you can count on somebody bidding against you. That would be something that adds value. Right now, the reality is nearly half, 46% of bid solicitations in San Francisco for all of our bids, our goods and services and construction contracts and all of that, get 1 or 0 bidder. We're not just minimizing competition, we are eliminating competition in nearly half of all cases. That's got to change.
Really stark terms.
Yeah, what San Francisco will look like is we will start getting more value, and then I think our budget situation, the structural problems that are really haunting our budget, will solve themselves. The reality is it won't solve themselves, but I think this is the lowest hanging fruit where we can get some real value, and we can do this in a way that we don't have to have draconian cuts. But if we don't do this, I think it's going to be a few painful years, and we don't know what's going to happen with tariffs and inflation and the Trump administration. There's a lot of variables out there, but we got to do everything we can as local policymakers to get our house in order.
No, and I agree. But when you start talking about a few painful years, what does that mean to a San Franciscan? If you are able to get this situation under control, how would that translate into everyday San Franciscans' lives? And I think that's kind of where then people will wake up and say, oh my gosh, this is what I need to vote for. This is what I need to support, or the opposite. So that's what I'm trying to get is like, what will people either suffer from or gain from, depending on which direction we go in.
Well, let me just it does. Here's what I would say. It's at the end of the day, this is a math problem. And if we were to get 20% more value from our competitive bidding, it would be $1.16 billion. The entire Muni budget is $1.5 billion.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you want to talk about, we're all in a panic. I represent a downtown district. I want to make sure that our transit is well funded and reliable and safe, fast, clean, like all of it. This is really important to our downtown. Overnight, we could solve the problems with Muni if we were to squeeze $1 billion of value out of our contracting.
You could squeeze $1 million by getting rid of the Bike Coalition's contract, just saying.
Well, I'm a bicyclist.
I know, but that's different than being a lobbyist.
Okay.
Had to say it, sorry.
Okay. So I think, it wouldn't, the thing that would change are some of the seemingly intractable problems. They're not intractable. They're solvable. And I think if we really look at the problems that we are creating ourselves so that policymakers can say, look what I'm doing to protect the Catholics in Northern Ireland, or look what I'm doing to express our outrage against Burma, or to protect Indonesian hardwood or virgin redwood, or, name the vanity issue from a bygone era. And it's somewhere in our contracts.
And many that don't even exist, right? Like, can you name some of the most absurd ones?
Burma was the one Burma is now Myanmar, but
right.
it's telling that it's still, by the way, San Francisco is not alone in this, by the way.
No.
New York City, actually, in 2023, New York City got rid of a bunch of things, including their own Equal Benefits Ordinance, including their own prohibition on, doing business with companies that do business with Burma. And they cleaned house and seemed to do it in a way that didn't have any blowback. I haven't seen any news coverage about it, but I mean,
which administration was that done under? Do you know?
It was 2023. I could send you the link. I could probably send you the link. But New York had a charter commission reform panel, and they were looking at things. Some of the laws had been preempted in court cases by state law, or a case law had thrown some out, and some were just sort of outdated. And it was a general cleanup that they did in 2023, and it was a lot of stuff that similar to the stuff that Raphael Mandelman was doing. I think Raphael's approach was to take, rather than getting rid of things or suspending enforcement of things, which is what I think we should be doing. Mm-hmm. He felt that we could get a lot of savings if we were just to elevate the threshold so that lower dollar contracts can be more competitive. I think that's a good start, and I support it, and I'm proud to co-sponsor it, and I applaud Raphael for doing it. But I think we have to have a larger conversation as we move forward.
So, Supervisor Dorsey, we had a question from Robert O'Reilly. He said, as he understands it, we now have the idea of measurable objectives to be imposed on contract. How do you feel about completing the thought with further legislation requiring a retroactive review of contract performance efficacy at expiration against such objectives before extension or renewal, and a report made public that review and its conclusions?
Ooh. I mean, I will tell you one reform that we also need in government is to stop having the Board of Supervisors demand reports from everybody. And I will say that I'm guilty as charged on some of those because I have asked for a lot of reports and I'm making a lot of people do work to inform us. I would like to think that there are some efficiencies that we can get with just changing our rules. I think if we were to have competitive bidding be more competitive, that would keep everybody honest about their performance. No, the possibility of getting outbid and out hustled next time would hopefully make sure that we're getting better value from our contractors. So I do believe in that sort of the free market perspective. I'd like to think that the Office of Contract Administration, and I think the city administrator does a great job on this. We have a performance division within the city controller's office, and we also have a nascent inspector general. So I'd like to think that there's enough chefs in the kitchen to do a good job of holding our contractors accountable. I will also say, and I have to give a plug for my longtime former employer, the city attorney's office. The city attorney's office has a public integrity unit that over the years has done some phenomenal work on waste, fraud, and abuse. So I'd like to think that there is enough good work being done to hold contractors accountable. To me, the biggest waste in the system is the ones that we have just created and then left there.
Do you know how Mayor Lurie feels about this?
I've communicated to his team and to the mayor that this is something that I feel strongly about, and I haven't heard how he feels about this, but I would welcome the opportunity to make my case. I think I want to give the mayor, any mayor, the ability to let things play out at the legislative level. We are a co-equal branch of government, and in many ways, it's good for the executive, whether that's the mayor, the governor, or the president, to let things play out, and then see where we are. My sense of the Lurie administration is, especially as I'm vice chair of the budget committee and having worked closely with the Lurie administration through that process, there is a full realization that we've got a lot of things to fix, and we have some structural problems that can't be postponed, that we have to address if we're going to succeed as a city. I feel really strongly that the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the waste that we can identify and get some real value for taxpayers is on the contracting side. I'd like to think that that's something that's going to find widespread agreement across the political spectrum, hopefully with labor and hopefully with the other fiscal watchdogs and others. I'd like to think that contracting is something we can all agree on. So far, I'm not encouraged, but as the debate moves forward, hopefully more people will see this the way I do.
Why are you not encouraged?
Pardon me?
Why are you not encouraged? What's
Well, no, I'm not discouraged, but it was telling that this was, that there was a lot of controversy even for raising the specter of questioning whether the Equal Benefits Ordinance has outlived its usefulness. I think its provisions have. I think it's worth keeping on the books, as I said, for in case something were to happen to Obergefell, and I think there's a case now where the Supreme Court is being asked to reconsider its decision on marriage equality. There are legal pundits I respect a lot who think it's unlikely, but it took the hard right 50 years to finally overturn Roe versus Wade. Marriage equality is really important to me. It's something that I've worked hard on for much of my career. I don't want to see that go away, and if it did, I want to make sure that we've got a backstop to protect gay and lesbian couples and the benefits that we could get or lose. So that's why I think there is a way that we can preserve the protections of equal benefits and open up competitive bidding to get the Equal Benefits Ordinance out of the way of competitive bidding. so that we can deliver some real value for taxpayers and solve the structural problems that are right now, as far as the eye can see. This is going to be a problem unless we get serious about some real reforms.
Okay, so who's on your side? Who's with you?
I have actually asked people to, when I have talked to my colleagues, what I have said is, here's my case. Let's wait until the budget and legislative analyst gets back to us. I'm not asking anybody to stand with me. In many ways, is like, I'm happy to have this be my fight, because I don't think anybody is going to accuse me of being hostile to the gay community. So like, nobody needs to feel that they need to get out there. I don't need any help because I don't even have legislation right now.
Right.
What we have is a request for the budget and legislative analyst. I'm asking people not to come out against me. And so far, I haven't seen a city official or colleague who has. If somebody were, what I would challenge anybody to say is, explain to me in a sentence or two why the Equal Benefits Ordinance has any value to the LGBTQ plus community beyond anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me the only principle that it's upholding is for people who don't like the institution of marriage or want, something different. And that's fine. I'm not saying we should do away with the domestic
But
partnerships.
that's going to be a vocal part of the opposition because this is San Francisco.
It could be. What I would say, I do feel really strongly that the principle that animated domestic partnerships and made it a front and center issue for years, through much of the 1990s and beyond, that principle went away with the Obergefell decision. Yes, the volatility of that decision is something that we should all be concerned about, and yes, there's a way to address that. But we won. Equal Benefits accomplished its mission 10 years ago. And there's really, in the final analysis, we have to either say, it is either the case that the Equal Benefits Ordinance did what it set out to do by winning equal benefits for gay and lesbian couples, and that was something that marriage equality achieved, in no small part because of equal benefits. I think that Equal Benefits Ordinance furthered that conversation. But if the Equal Benefits Ordinance was created simply to expand domestic partnerships for domestic partnerships' sake, then I think we have to own that this is failing to do that, as we are seeing fewer and fewer companies offering domestic partnership benefits. In that case, then the analysis is closer to where we were with 12X of the administrative code, where we had a law that was prohibiting doing business with companies that were based in 30 states. And we're not, it's clear that the law is doing nothing to rein in laws that are hostile, laws that we don't like. We have to conclude that all the law is doing is costing San Francisco taxpayers money, and it's not changing anything. Now, if the Equal Benefits Ordinance isn't expanding domestic partnerships as it was when it was before marriage equality, then I think there's just an efficacy argument where we were with 12X. In either analysis, the contracting restrictions have outlived their usefulness, and it's probably time to move on. But let's see what the numbers tell us.
Well, shouldn't we in some way get rid of all no bid contracts? I mean, if possible. It to me, it seems, that, a good example is my story on the Gubbio project and how, the emails that came through the public records request showed basically a contract that was custom tailored, not just custom tailored for them, but then they were made a city contractor so they could have the contract that, was custom built for them. It seems there are clearly more organizations than just them that could run a, quote, resting center or whatever they're calling it. I fear that San Francisco has so ingrained in it, from Dwayne Jones to Harlan Kelly to Mohammed Nehru in its culture. For that matter, Willie Brown, to do these no bid, give my friend a contract things that I feel like the city has been mired in that sort of thing for a very long time.
Yeah, I guess sometimes there are reasons for a no bid contract, but I think there has to be accountability and transparency in how we do that.
Yeah, can we agree it shouldn't happen over a series of private emails between a supervisor's office, that being Ronan, Mayor Breed, and Hillary Coonan's office in the Department of Public Health. I mean, who basically helped Gubbio to build that contract for them and then made them a contractor. I mean, I think that those kind of things, if we're going to talk about contracting reform, we also have to look at the slippery slope of rubbing backs and that kind of thing.
Right. I think we can agree that good government is honest government, and honest government requires that competitive bidding be as competitive as possible. That is what will make sure that
and transparent.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to see transparency, because clearly that hasn't, as the person that broke the corruption stories, with Nuru and Kelly, I mean, we still have yet to see that kind of transparency in contracts.
Yeah.
I think the other issue here, especially when you're talking about sole source contracts, is the innovation in government argument, where there may be only one entity that has one that is actually effectively implemented a solution, or at least according to whoever is presenting this. And that still needs to be vetted to a degree that makes it convincing, or
right.
I think this is something that we hear from both sides of the political spectrum sometimes, when necessity versus innovation. If someone talks about something as having an innovative solution, therefore we should have a social source bid a contract over it. Okay, great. You still need to make your case.
Right. I agree. And there's some legislation that I am working on that pertains to recovery housing. And that is one thing that I do have some worries about, because I think some of the permanent supportive housing providers are taking the position that they don't do recovery housing.
Yep.
And they don't do drug-free options. The reality is that the challenges that we're going to face in the 21st century, as we get further and further into the era of synthetic drugs, is we're going to have to be much more focused on recovery and recovery-oriented and drug-free options, and doing everything we can to incentivize and support people getting off of drugs. We need better and more effective demand-side interventions, because the supply-side interventions of our drug policy are going to have diminishing returns, and they already are. So this is the reason, I know this is sort of off topic, but this is the reason I asked for this job in the first place as a recovering drug addict. I really, really believe this is where San Francisco needs to be, and where every city in the 21st century needs to be. And I have worries that some of our providers don't see themselves as people who do drug-free or recovery-oriented options. And in some ways, I feel like, it's not like sober people are going to be more of a handful than drug users. I know we're self-involved and talk about ourselves a lot, but I mean, it's kind of, we're not that bad. So I do want to make sure that we're not in a situation where we are saying, oh, it's recovery housing, therefore we go to this one organization that does it. I would like to invite everybody who does permanent supportive housing to rethink, hey, what can you do to be a part of this as well? But right now, and I think this is, more to come on this in the next month or two, but right now, virtually 100% of our permanent supportive housing stock in San Francisco is drug tolerant. Some of that is required by state law because it's state funded, but where it's locally funded, it doesn't have to have that policy. It's really just a policy choice that's the way we do it. Right. I think we need drug-free options and recovery-oriented options. I appreciate that Matt Haney is in the legislature fighting heroically for this principle, and I'm working with Raphael Mandelman locally on the same principle. But the success or failure of this effort is going to depend on having our nonprofit partners step up and help us. So I'm hoping we have a good competitive bidding structure there too. And I have talked to them, to a number of them, but
I mean, Narcan is not an answer, right? It's a Band-Aid, and some of these drugs are just increasingly becoming more powerful.
Right.
They're adding new drugs into the drugs that then become Narcan resistant. I mean, I mean, we've interviewed people that have been, they claim, brought back 20, 30 times. I mean, at some point you've got, who knows, when now they're in their 20s or 30s, they'll be, who knows, they might be a vegetable in their 40s or 50s. We just don't know. So I think we have to look at alternatives. What we're doing now is clearly not working. I mean, I watched J.J. Smith's video today, just, walking down an alley of, 16th and Mission with just a bunch of, people just lying on the sidewalks. That's just not an answer in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I went to a interim housing site with Elizabeth Funk of Dignity Moves and with Matt Mahan, the mayor of San Jose, a couple of weeks ago for a story, and I'm working on now. And, I asked him, how come there aren't, because Elizabeth said it's been frustrating for her with the Dignity Moves site in San Francisco that there are, people using drugs and selling drugs outside of it. And I asked Matt Mahan, how come I don't see that here? And he said, because we won't tolerate it. And I think we would just have to accept the fact that, that complacency is complicity. You can't accept this behavior and say that you're going to change it, because you're not going to change anything if people know there are no consequences. And I know people hate to hear me say that, especially the, Housing First, Morgue Second crew. But the fact is that 60% of deaths happen inside of housing. And we've got to start accepting that fact and realize that what we're doing is not, look at this guy, Walker Quinn, right? Just arrested for vandalizing Waymos. I mean, I turned him over, to ACC when that picture of him choking a pit bull came out, and then they went and took the dog. But I also contacted the DA's office, and they're well aware of him, and yet it took this for him to get arrested and charged. I just think that we've got to be. I just can tell you that being in two cities, in two areas, Silicon Valley and San Francisco, fairly frequently, the difference is monumental in how they treat this issue. And until we start treating it differently, it's not going to change.
I agree. And I will say, in hindsight, I will always believe that 2020 was a pivotal year that was a perfect storm for the drug crisis in San Francisco, because fentanyl was arriving at the same moment that COVID was arriving. At the same moment, we made a decision that we were going to go aggressively with the shelter-in-place hotel program to get people off the street. We created large communities of drug users that were served by 24-hour-a-day drug dealing. And that was the year that we had a new district attorney who made no bones about the fact that he's not going to prosecute drug dealers.
Right.
And this was a policy choice of San Francisco voters. That was where we were in 2019 and 2020, as we were going into this perfect storm of, I think we're still digging out from that. And I live in a neighborhood in Mid-Market that, we had a disproportionate share of shelter-in-place hotels. And we saw that this neighborhood we just lost civilization here.
It was ravaged.
It was. And now we are in a better place from where we were, but we still have a long way to go. Right. I'm encouraged by the progress we're making. I do think that, the other part of the perfect storm was a police department that is vastly understaffed, and we've got to do more. This has been a priority for me, because what happens when your police department is at 75% staffing, it's not the case that we just, everybody gets 75% less service. What it means is the priority A and priority B, crime in progress, those calls will always get 100%. What happens is that the lower level kinds of quality of life issues, public drug use, street level drug dealing, all the associated harms that are largely drug driven, including retail theft and street conditions and other things like that are all the externalities of public drug use. Those are the things that we don't have the luxury to enforce anymore. and we should never have gotten into that situation. What frustrates me about that is, of all the things that happened in the last several years, the one that we knew was coming was a disproportionately large generational cohort of police officers reaching retirement age, and we should have been hiring more aggressively, and we weren't. And we were going in the opposite direction and having a serious conversation about defunding the police. We should never have been in that situation, and we shouldn't be in the situation that we're in now. I appreciate that the mayor is making progress on that, but boy, it's gonna have we're gonna have a big challenge solving much of anything if we can't solve our police staffing problem.
Oh yeah, I remember 2 years ago when I was at the Standard, and I was sitting in the press office, and I was looking on the computer at the SFG TV and the board going on, and everyone thought that the board was about to adjourn and clear out of the chambers, and then all of a sudden, Peskin brings up something with Chief Scott there, and this began the whole issue over rotating captains, and why are you rotating captains all over the place? And I'm mad because my station keeps losing our captains, and it's all your fault. I want to be mad at you. And Chief Scott was trying to explain this whole situation with the fact that we've lost older officers, we've lost high-ranking officers, we've lost, it's a national situation brought on partially by the crime bill under the Clinton administration. That class of officers has sort of gone through their career path and nothing to replace it.
Right.
But I do want to add. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to jump in because I do need to leave, and I wanted to say thank you, Matt Dorsey. Thank you, Supervisor, for being here. It's an important conversation. You did bring up something at the very end that I wanted to jump in, and that is the tents on the streets, and we have had this problem starting in 2020. Really good information because the Wall Street Journal just did a story, and they compared the tent level of 2020 to what it is today, which is a bizarre marker because we had such a unique, it was a black swan, it was a unique event. We really should have been, any long-term San Franciscan would know you don't use 2020 as your starting point for data. It should have gone way before that because that was a unique circumstance. And of course, now we're digging our way out of this, which is going to be a long slog for sure. Yeah. So I want to say thank you very much. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Well, I will say too that that I did a story way back in 2016 for the Marina Times called "We Built This City" about the Super Bowl city. That's really when ironically Daniel Lurie was a big part of that as the chairman of that committee. He and Mayor Lee, when they built that city, they displaced a lot of people and pushed them basically over to division. Anyone that lives over there will tell you how angry they remain about that. And the fact of the matter is, he promised even then $13 million that was going to solve the problem, but it clearly just expanded and spread over the city. So, I did a story saying my friend Steve and I would drive to Costco and we call them Leevilles. They were just everywhere. And I don't see where, yes, 2020, and we know Jennifer Friedenbach and her, cohort were handing out tents, and Kristen Evans was, on the tent team, and they were handing out tents. But that was happening, if you look back at the screenshots in my articles, you'll see that was happening, 2017, 16, 18, 19. It wasn't just the pandemic.
No, certainly, but you had the essence of it in terms of you had the tent city outside the library. And that was just fun. Okay, on that note,
outside Civic Center.
Oh my gosh. Okay, listen, everybody have a great start to your next week. Always a great conversation. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy
have a great week,
Watermelon Festival.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Have a great Sunday, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.